Hello everybody, it's Nancy News here, and today we've gotten a lot of breaking dates today. And the first news we're talking about today is coming from Russia. So if you remember in the previous video, we talked about how Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, declared the Easter truce in Ukraine from 6 p.m. April the 19th to midnight April the 21st, Moscow time. So the Easter truce is now officially over. So the ceasefire is officially over, and now Russia has resumed combat operations in Ukraine. And two, Putin did not actually give the order to extend the Easter truce, the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated to the news agency of TASS. Even though now the United States is now backing the extension of Putin's Eastern ceasefire, there will be no extension of Vladimir Putin's Easter ceasefire. And even though there was a ceasefire truce in Ukraine on the battlefield, there was many violations on both sides. So according to Russia's defense ministry, there were about 4,900 violations of the Easter truce by Ukraine recorded by Russia's defense ministry. According to the defense ministry of Russia, Ukrainian forces continue to strike Russian positions and civilian infrastructure despite the declaration of an Easter ceasefire, the ministry informed. During this period, the Ukrainian military used 90 drones, and 8 of which were destroyed outside of the war in Ukraine, outside of the special military operations zones, so the war zone in Ukraine. And along with that, Zelensky also published his update on the truce of the Easter truce ceasefire. So according to Zelensky, since the morning, the Russian forces have violated the Easter ceasefire over 2,000 times, with 67 assaults and 1,355 shellings, including 713 with heavy weapons. According to Zelensky, Russian forces used FPV drones 673 times despite the Easter ceasefire. So very interesting news. So according to the both sides, they both apparently violated the Easter ceasefire. So very interesting news. So now the Easter truce in Ukraine is now officially over, and fighting is now resuming as normal. So big news. The second biggest news today is coming from Vladimir Putin again, where we've just got news that Vladimir Putin has just signed the law of ratifying the strategic partnership agreement between Russia and Iran. So this has just came out today. So unlike the agreements with North Korea and Russia, this document doesn't have a mutual obligation for military support in case of military aggression against one of the parties. The Iranian and Russian agreement obligates the parties not to supply any aid to the aggressor in that case. So Moscow and Tehran also won't join in the sanctions of other countries against each other. So very big news. So Iran and Russia are technically now officially allies, and Putin has signed the law ratifying the strategic partnership agreement with Iran. We've also got some news today that President Putin also met with the Sultan of Oman, so the leader of Oman. So Putin meets the Sultan of Oman for the first time. So Hadham bin Tariq Al Saad's visit to Moscow concludes with the 40th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries of Oman and of Russia. So, if you can see here in the bottom left corner, we can see the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the President, the Sultan of Oman, hold a press conference. So I'll just go over the key statements that were made by the two leaders and the key points that were made and conclusions made by this meeting. So Putin announced that Russia plans to hold a summit with Arab countries later this year. Ahead of the Sultan's visit to Russia, a comprehensive package of documents was prepared, Putin noted. The Sultan expressed Oman's interest in collaborating with Russia in energy and agricultural and trade. The Sultan empathized with the desire for more Omani officials to visit Moscow and other Russian cities. Russia is hoping for further steps in energy cooperation with Oman, according to President Vladimir Putin. The Sultan also urged Russia's businesses to establish branches in Oman and foster mutual investment. Additionally, the government of Russia and Oman have signed an agreement to mutually waive visa requirements for holders of regular passports. So the two leaders of Oman and Russia have practically agreed of more trade between the two countries, especially in trade, and also is making it easier for citizens of both countries to visit the opposite country. So very big news, and that's practically all the news we've gotten from the Omani and Russian delegation visit there. And we've also gotten some breaking news today. That's Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff plans to visit Moscow again this week, according to Putin's assistant Ushakov. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. So the special envoy of Trump's administration, Steve Witkoff, will be meeting Vladimir Putin for, I believe, the 4th time now, and it's going to be happening this week. And we don't actually know what specific date it will be. All we know is that Steve Witkoff will be meeting Vladimir Putin again for the 4th time this week. So very big news. The next news coming today is coming from the Baltic Sea, and more specifically coming from the Kaliningrad region of Russia. So we've got news that the British fighter jets intercepted 2 Russian aircrafts flying close to NATO airspace this week. So according to the news we've got according to the UK's Ministry of Defence, 2 Russian aircrafts flying close to NATO's airspace were detected by British fighters jets in separate incidents earlier this week, the UK Ministry of Defence reported. So a pair of RAF Typhoons jets were scrambled to intercept a Russian IL-20M Coot, an intelligence aircraft over the Baltic Sea on the 15th of April, while another 2 Typhoon jets were intercepted an unknown Russian aircraft leaving the Kaliningrad airspace on the 17th of April. The 2 interceptions, which took part from the Malibuk airbase in Poland, were a part of the UK's contribution to NATO's enhanced air policing. So British fighters have intercepted 2 Russian aircrafts flying close to NATO airspace this week, and obviously, if you can see here, we can actually see some of the images of the interception of the British RAF Air Force, the Russian aerospace forces in the Baltic Sea. The next news we've got today is coming from Ukraine. So this actually happened a couple days ago, but we'll just quickly go over it today. So we've got news a couple days ago that there's been a huge prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine. And furthermore, the next news we've gotten today is coming from Ukraine. So this news came out a couple of days ago, but I'll just quickly go over it today. So we've got on news a couple of days ago that there's been a huge prisoner exchange between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. So you can see here in the bottom left corner, we can see there's been a huge prisoner exchange. In total of 277 soldiers from each side were brought back to their country. So it was 277 soldiers for 277 soldiers. So if you can see this video here in the bottom left corner, we can actually see from the Ukrainian side of 277 Ukrainian soldiers returning to Ukraine after they were captured by the Russians in the war in Ukraine. And furthermore, the next news come today is coming from Ukraine. So we've got a news, well, this news I'm about to say happened a couple days ago, but we'll just quickly go over it today. We had news a couple days ago that there has been a huge prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine. There's been a huge... And furthermore, the next news we've got today is coming from Ukraine. So the news, what I'm going to say, happened a couple days ago, but we'll just quickly go over it today. So we had news a couple days ago that there was a huge prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine, with a total of 277 prisoners, a prisoner of wars each, that were swapped out with each other. So If you can see here in the bottom left corner, we can see the Ukrainian side of a prisoner exchange. In total, 277 Ukrainian prisoner of wars were released from Russian captivity. The same goes from Russia, so those 277 Russians, POWs that were released from Ukrainian captivity, and they swapped over. So this is probably one of the biggest Ukrainian and Russian prison exchanges that they have done. So interesting news. And furthermore, we've also got some news today coming from the US President Donald Trump. So according to US President Donald Trump, on his latest social media post, he stated that hopefully Russia and Ukraine will make a deal this week. Both will then start to do big business with the United States of America, which is thriving and will make a fortune. So according to Donald Trump's latest post on social media, hopefully Russia and Ukraine will make a deal this week. And he also mentioned this in his Easter celebrations, which we'll go over about a bit later. So according to the US President Donald Trump, reporters asked Trump with questions on whether Russia and Ukraine can strike a deal this week, and he again stated that there is a very good chance. So the meaning of striking a deal, I'm just coming up with the conclusion that it means a ceasefire, another ceasefire in Ukraine. So big news. And we've also got news today that the Ukrainian delegation will go to London and talk to discuss a ceasefire in Ukraine. So the Ukrainian delegation will take part in talks in London next week, confirmed by Zelensky and Zelensky's office advisor. So a possible ceasefire in Ukraine will be discussed at the meeting with the participation of the United States and Europe. So according to news we've gotten, the talks in London will be a continuation of the meeting in Paris on April the 17th, where the US has a settlement plan on Ukraine. One of them is easing sanctions against Russia, and Ukraine a refusal to join NATO, and Russia keeping its territories that have been captured in the war in Ukraine under Russian control. So Russia insists on taking its interests into account in this London summit, which Vladimir Putin previously empathized with Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff on April the 11th. So maybe this week or next week we could potentially see another ceasefire and truce in Ukraine for maybe 30 days, and we'll just see what happens here. So interesting news. And the next news we've gotten today is coming from Ukraine again, where we've got news that Sweden has just delivered its first surveillance aircraft to Ukraine and conducted its first test flight conducted over the eastern Ukrainian city of Lviv. So one of the Swedish airborne radar surveillance aircraft promised to Ukraine has arrived and conducted a test flight over the city of Lviv, according to Clash reports. So Sweden has announced the delivery of two ACS-890 aircraft to Ukraine in May 2024. So Sweden's Ministry of Defense stated that these aircraft will provide Ukraine with entirely new capabilities in airborne radar surveillance. So the ACS-890 aircraft can detect aerial and maritime targets at a distance of up to 400 kilometers. So according to Sweden, these two aircraft will greatly improve the capabilities of Ukraine's detection of Russian missile strikes in Ukraine, and also Russia's fleet movement in the Black Sea. So very big news. So again, according to Sweden, these two aircraft will greatly improve Ukraine's capabilities of shooting down Russian missiles. And the next news we've got today is coming from Serbia, where we've got news that Serbia has just signed a contract worth $150 million with the Israeli company of Abit Systems for the procurement of the Ankara missiles. These Ankara missiles have a range up to 35 kilometers, 150 kilometers, and the Predator Hawk missile with a range of 300 kilometers. So these missiles are intended to use with the Plus multiple launch rocket system, which has reportedly already been delivered to Serbia. So Serbia just signed a $150 million contract with the Israeli company of Abit Systems for the procurement of the Ankara missiles. And probably one of the biggest news come today is coming from the Vatican. So we've got on news today that Pope Francis has passed away at the age of 88, the Vatican reports. So before his passing, Pope Francis suffered complications from double pneumonia and also early stages of kidney failure. So Pope Francis's cause of death was a stroke, causing a coma and an irreversible heart failure, according to his death certificate released by the Vatican. So Pope Francis was just seen yesterday in public on Easter Sunday. That same day, he also met J.D. Vance. So J.D. Vance was probably one of the last people to meet Pope Francis on Easter Sunday at the Vatican, and then later he passed away that night. So obviously, a lot of leaders have responded to this, sending condolences to many Catholics around the world. But Trump is actually going to be attending the Pope Francis funeral in Rome. So the US president will make his first official visit abroad since returning to office to Rome to attend Pope Francis's funeral in Rome. So in memory of Pope Francis, Trump has ordered all US flags to be flown at half-staff, and I'm pretty sure the United Kingdom has just ordered that as well. And the next news we've got today is coming from Germany, slash Netherlands. So we've got news that the Netherlands will purchase 46 of the latest German-made Leopard 2A8 battle tanks. So the Netherlands will be ordering from Germany 46 of the latest German-made Leopard 2A8 battle tanks, and they will arrive in the near future. The next news we've got today is coming from Greece and Turkey. We've got news that shots were just exchanged between the Greek Coast Guard and a Turkish boat. So a few hours ago, the Greek Coast Guard approached a boat bearing the Turkish flag that was located in Greek waters. It was going to be a routine inspection. Suddenly, shots were fired at the crew of the Turkish vessel, and they were also returned by the Greek Coastal Guard. So the Turkish vessel fled into international waters shortly after. There are no reports of injury in the Greek Coastal Guard, but if you can see here in the bottom left corner, we can see a couple of the bullet holes of the from the Turkish ship that fired on the Greek Coastal Guard, but they haven't catched the people yet, so I'll keep you updated if there's any news on that on my Telegram channel. The next news we've got today is coming from Syria. We've got news that the first ship carrying 6,600 tons of wheat, reportedly from the Russian Federation, has just arrived in Syria since the change in the leadership in the country. So Syria reportedly has received its first batch of Russian wheat since the change in the leadership in the country, and they have received a reported number of 6,600 tons of wheat. We've also got news today that Qatar is going to be sending diplomats to the United States of America to push for lifting serious sanctions and rebuilding the country. So the authorities and the delegation of Qatar, this country here, next to Saudi Arabia and close to Syria, will be sending its delegation to America, and it will be trying to push Donald Trump to try and lift sanctions on the Syrian authorities and Syria in general to try and rebuild the country, reports are stating. The next news we've got today is coming from Israel. So we've got news today that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, stated that Israel has no choice but to continue fighting in the Gaza Strip and will not end the war until it destroys Hamas, frees the hostages, and ensures that the territory does not pose a threat to Israel. And while Benjamin Netanyahu made this statement, Hamas has opened recruitment for approximately 30,000 fighters in Gaza. So Hamas has yet again refilled its ranks of personnel with 30,000 fighters. So at least 30,000 active fighters of Hamas are still operating in the Gaza Strip, fighting the Israeli Defense Forces. We've also got news today that Israel has just denied entry to 27 French officials and MPs after the president of France, Macron, says he will recognize the state of Palestine in the coming weeks or perhaps months after his visit to Egypt. And due to Macron's statements about recognizing a Palestinian state, the French delegation that was about to land in Israel was cancelled. So the delegation expressed outrage over the major rupture in diplomatic ties after their entry was revoked just days before their planned arrival. So very big news. We've also got news today that the Israeli Defense Forces Chief of Staff has just visited the Israeli forces stationed in Syria, stating that their presence is an essential for the defense of Israel itself. He also confirmed that the IDF units will continue to operate in Syria. So, you remember a couple months back now, Bashar al-Assad was ousted to Russia, and when the HDS rebel groups took in control of Syria, Israel launched an incursion into Syria to try and get, a buffer zone on Syria. And it seems that the Israeli Defense Forces will be staying in its occupied territory that it's managed to capture as a result of its offensive operations. We've also got some news today that the Israeli Air Force also held drills today simulating a missile and rockets barrage on its own bases, rehearsing a scenario modelled on the Iranian April attack. So, Israel's Air Force is now holding an exercise in preparations for a possible attack on Iran and a counter attack that may follow. So, the Israeli Air Force, as we speak, are now conducting military exercises to try and simulate a missile and rockets barrage attack on its own bases. So, interesting news. We've also got news today that Yemen shoots down its 21st Reaper MQ-9 drone over the capital city of Yemen, Sana'a. So the Army Colonel Mujib Shahsan of the Houthi forces says that the country's air defenses are now match America's drone capabilities. Many weaknesses in drone systems have been exposed. So, interesting news. So the Houthi forces have managed to shoot down its 21st MQ-9 Reaper US drone so far. And the next news we've got today is coming from Egypt/China. So we've got news that China and Egypt conduct its first ever military air exercises, which is a sign of closer ties between Egyptian and Chinese relations. So the Eagles of Civilization's 2025 China and Egypt's first joint air drills have happened. So Egypt and China have launched the first ever joint air force drill, the Eagles of Civilization 2025, running from mid-April to early May in Egypt. So the Chinese People's Liberation Army's Air Force has deployed a range of advances assets, including the J-10C's fighters, and also the jets of the Y-20 strategic transporters, the KG-500 early warning aircraft, and also the YY-20A refueling tankers. Egyptian pilots and ground crew are taking part alongside their Chinese counterparts in an air-to-air combat drills. So strategically, the exercises showcase China's ability to project an air power over long distances, flying 6,000 kilometers to reach Cairo, the capital city of Egypt, and to perform military exercises there. So China and Egypt conduct their first ever joint air drill called the Eagles of Civilization of 2025. And the next news we've got today is coming from Iran. So we've got news that the next round of nuclear talks between the United States and Iran will take place tomorrow or today, depending on what time you watch this video, on April the 23rd. So the US and Iranian third round of nuclear talks are scheduled for today. Expert-level negotiations will be held with mediators, says Iran's deputy foreign minister. I believe the location will be set in Oman or again in Rome for the nuclear talks between the two countries. And we've also got some news today coming from India. We've got news that JD Vance, the Vice President of America, has arrived in India for another historic visit. The trip carries both diplomatic and personnel significance. So we can see here in the bottom left corner, we can see JD Vance actually meet with the Prime Minister of India, Modi. So let's just go over the key statements that were made by the two officials. So first, JD Vance is now pushing for India to purchase the F-35 fighter jets. And also, JD Vance also wants India to buy more American-made weapons and equipment because JD Vance believes they are the best in the class. JD Vance also stated that the US and India are going to be tightening defense manufacturing ties even further. Prior administrations, like the Joe Biden administration, saw India as a source of low-cost labor as they criticized the Prime Minister's government. JD Vance says that Trump's White House is looking to build a relationship of equals with India and Prime Minister Modi's government, calling it arguably the most popular in the democratic world. We've also got news today, separate from JD Vance's visit to India, that Indian media reports that Sri Lanka has declined an Indian proposal to build a bridge connecting India and Sri Lanka together. And the next news coming from India today is coming from northern western India, where we've gotten reports that there has just been a terrorist attack that's happened in this exact town of Peshgram here, practically on the borders of China and India. So there's been breaking news today that there's a terrorist attack that's happened and is apparently still ongoing in Palagram, this town here, in the disputed region of Kashmir in India. So the death toll is currently at 27 people from the terror attack in Pashgram, Kashmir, India. So Palagram Hospital, the hospital of this town, has declared a state of an emergency. We've gotten some videos of the aftermath of the shooting, and it's just horrible. There's videos circulating online, shows many bodies scattered across the ground in the field just after the shooting took place. So India's Prime Minister Modi has condemned the terrorist attack that has happened just now. India's special forces have just arrived at the scene of Palagram, Kashmir, India. India media calls it the worst terror attack since 2019. 3 gunmen were allegedly involved carrying out the attack of Pashgram, Kashmir in northern western India. 2 international tourists were among the 27 people that were killed. The rest were mostly locals, all tourists within India. So there was only 2 international tourists that were killed in the terrorist attack here. So initial reports suggest that one of the 2 international tourists were killed in Pashgram was one was an Italian and the other was an Israeli. We've gotten many videos that have been circulating the internet after the shootings on this town, and it's just absolutely horrible. Again, if you do want to see the videos for some reason, there will be in the link in the description below in the Telegram app, in my Telegram server. So again, to summarize everything, there was a terrorist attack in this town here near the border of China, Pashgram, where there was 3 alleged shooters that killed 27 people. Two of them were international tourists. We still don't know why these gunmen did this. There's still an investigation on the gunmen. The next news we got today is coming from China. So we've got news that China has successfully tested a non-nuclear hydrogen bomb, South China Morning Post reported. So Chinese scientists have successfully tested a non-nuclear explosive device based on hydrogen. So the 2-kilogram bomb created a fireball with a temperature of over 1000 degrees that lasted for more than 2 seconds, 15 times longer than a similar explosion used in TNT. So the device did not use any nuclear materials. The main component of the bomb was magnesium hydride, a silvery powder capable of storing significant amounts of hydrogen. The next news we've got today is coming from South Korea. So we've got news that South Korea's exports have fell by 5.2% in April so far. So this is apparently due to Donald Trump's tariffs that have been taking place in South Korea and the threatening of economic sanctions against South Korea. But even though the US threatens and has put tariffs on South Korea has vowed it will not fight back against US tariffs. Its acting president has said, citing the country's historical debt to Washington ahead of trade talks with Donald Trump's administration set to begin next week. So Han Duck-soo, a technocrat serving as the acting president following Yoon Suk-yeol's removal from office this month by the country's constitutional court, he said that the role of the United States was huge in making Korea what it is now. So South Korea has completely refused to act and retaliate to Donald Trump's tariffs. The next news we've got today is coming from New Zealand, where we've got news that New Zealand's Asian population surpasses the Maui native population for the first time. Whites still cling to the majority. So new DNA reveals that New Zealand's Asian population has overtaken the Maui population with a rapid 4.8% annual growth rate, while European majorities growing at 0.3%, now hovering slightly above 50%. The next news we've got today is coming from Donald Trump. So we've just gotten some economic news coming in just today that there's been $1.5 trillion that have been wiped out from the US stock market today. So the stock market of America is still hurting a bit. Just today, the United States stock market lost $1.5 trillion. But with that loss of the stock market, the crypto market added 60 billion. So $60 billion was added to the crypto market instead. So, interesting news. We've also got news today that Harvard University strikes back and is now suing the Trump administration. So Harvard University has filed a lawsuit against the Donald Trump administration after the White House blocked $2.2 billion in federal funding for the university and threatened to withhold $1.1 billion in additional grants, media reports. So Harvard is seeking a ruling that the funding freeze is illegal, arguing that the Trump administration is trying to force the university to change its governance, academic programs, and employment practices in ways that violate free speech. So the university is challenging the Trump administration's actions, which Harvard says are trying to force the school to take serious concessions in exchange for maintaining funding, requiring audits of degree programs, verification of the beliefs of the international students, and the employment of staff to monitor the compliance with White House demands. So Harvard University is now officially suing the Trump administration, and that's all the news I actually have for you today. I am Don Seeing News, I'll try and provide you news that medias around the world do not show you. I do these videos hopefully daily, so consider subscribing and liking. And if you want to support me personally, please consider donating in the link in the description below, either becoming a member of the channel or simply donating in the PayPal link in the description in below. Also, if you want to see the news that I cannot show on YouTube, or news, just breaking news, consider joining the Telegram link in the description below. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Bye.